Once upon a time, a wise old professor gathered his students for a special lesson. The students entered the classroom to find an empty glass jar on the professor's desk, alongside several containers. One filled with large stones, another with small pebbles, a third with sand, and a pitcher of water. The professor smiled as he began. "Today," he said, "I want to teach you something about how to live a meaningful life." Holding up one of the large stones, he explained, "These large stones represent the most important things in your life: your family, your health, your friendships, and your dreams. These are the things that truly matter. If everything else were taken away, these would still give your life meaning." He asked a few students to come forward and place the large stones into the jar. The students carefully arranged the stones until they couldn't fit any more. When they had placed the last stone, the professor asked, "Is the jar full?" The students nodded, confident that there was no more space. But the professor smiled knowingly and reached for the container of pebbles. Without a word, he began pouring the pebbles into the jar. The small stones trickled down and filled the spaces between the large stones, settling in comfortably. Shaking the jar slightly to help the pebbles settle further, he asked again, "Is the jar full now?" The students looked at each other, realizing there was a twist to the professor's lesson. "Probably not," one student replied, beginning to understand. The professor nodded in agreement, then picked up the container of sand. As he poured the fine grains into the jar, they sifted into the tiny spaces between the stones and pebbles, filling in every little gap. Once again he asked, "Now, is the jar full?" The students laughed, finally catching on. "No," they replied in unison. The professor chuckled along with them and, as a final step, took the pitcher of water. He poured it into the jar, and the water trickled down, filling even the tiniest spaces between the stones, pebbles, and sand until the jar was brimming to the top. Setting the pitcher down, he looked at his students. "What do you think this demonstration means?" he asked, his voice soft but serious. One student raised her hand thoughtfully and replied, "That no matter how full our lives seem, there's always room for more." The professor nodded thoughtfully but gently added, "That's one interpretation, but there's a more important lesson here. Think carefully. If I had poured in the water or sand first, would the large stones have fit?" The students thought for a moment and shook their heads. The professor smiled and continued, "The truth is, if you don't put the big stones in first, you'll never have room for them later. In life, the big stones are the things that matter most. Your family, your health, your friends, your passions. If you fill your life with the small things first, the distractions, minor worries, or little daily tasks, you won't have room left for what's truly meaningful." The students nodded as understanding dawned on them. They realized the importance of prioritizing the things that truly matter. The professor gave them a final, encouraging smile. "Remember this as you go through life. Always put your big stones in first. If you prioritize what matters, everything else will find its place around them. But if you don't, the most important things might get pushed aside." Let's learn some words from the story. Demonstration. Meaning, a demonstration is a practical or visual explanation of how something works or is done. Example: the professor's demonstration with the jar and stones helped the students understand an important life lesson. Interpretation. Meaning, interpretation refers to the act of explaining the meaning of something or understanding something in a particular way. Example: the student offered her interpretation of the jar activity, thinking it meant there's always room for more in life. Prioritize. Meaning, to prioritize means to arrange or deal with things in order of their importance. Example: the professor encouraged the students to prioritize their big stones, the most important things in life, before dealing with smaller tasks. Significance. Meaning, significance is the importance or meaning of something. Example: the significance of the lesson was clear. Focus on what matters most, or the smaller, less important things will take over your time. Brimming. Meaning, when something is brimming, it's filled to the top, almost overflowing. Example: the professor poured water into the jar until it was brimming, showing that even the smallest spaces can be filled. Realize. Meaning, to realize means to understand or become aware of something. Example: the students realized that they needed to put their most important goals and values first in life. Twist. Meaning, a twist is an unexpected change or development in a story or situation. Example: the students thought the jar was full, but the professor added pebbles, then sand, then water, which added a twist to the demonstration. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.